The year is 1969. A small boy is camping with his family in the vast, unforgiving wilderness of the Great Smoky Mountains. One moment, he is visible, playing in a clearing. The next, he is gone. No scream, no struggle, just silence. You would think finding a missing person in the United States, with all our technology, would be a certainty. But what if I told you that in certain specific geographic locations, people don't just get lost. They vanish. They evaporate into thin air, leaving behind a chilling pattern of circumstances that defy all conventional explanations. These are not isolated incidents. My name is David Paulides. For years, through the work of Missing 411, I have cataloged the impossible thousands of people who have disappeared, usually in or near U.S. national parks and forests. These are not just statistics we are counting. These are clusters of similar events that share unnerving and identical facts. And the facts, they will make the hairs on your arms stand up. Welcome to Mystery Rift. Tonight, we are digging deep into the phenomenon that the media and the National Park Service would rather pretend doesn't exist, Missing 411. The term Missing 411 is a catalog of cases that share a series of highly unusual and often identical characteristics. This goes beyond typical search and rescue protocols. When I first began this investigation, I was a detective trying to solve a puzzle. I filed countless Freedom of Information Act requests. I spoke to police, park rangers, and grieving families. What I found was a disturbing and consistent refusal to acknowledge that these disappearances shared anything in common. The first thing you need to understand is the sheer volume. We are talking thousands of individuals, spanning back over 100 years. But it is not the quantity that chills you to the bone. It is the specificity. These cases often share common denominators criteria that should never logically overlap. The official narrative just doesn't hold water. When a person gets lost, they typically follow the path of least resistance. They go downhill. They might panic. But in Missing 411 cases, the victims often defy all logic. They travel uphill through extremely dense terrain, sometimes over vast distances. And sometimes they are found without their clothes. Let's look at a prime example, one that embodies so many of the unnerving patterns. Dennis Martin, June 14th, 1969. Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Dennis, a 6-year-old boy, was camping with his family near a spot called Spence Field. The boys decided to play a prank on the adults, running ahead of them to hide. His brother saw him cross a small ridge. Dennis was wearing a bright red shirt and blue shorts. Within 5 minutes, his father looked up, and Dennis was gone. Now, this area was rugged, but it was not impassable. They launched one of the largest search operations in Park Service history. with hundreds of people and tracker dogs. And what did they find? Absolutely nothing. Here is where the missing 411 pattern kicks in. And it is disturbing. The disappearance happened in the blink of an eye, in the presence of family. This is what we call a rapid onset vanishing. The trained search dogs could pick up absolutely no scent trail, not even the family's, right from the starting point. It is as if something was able to lift him or remove him without disturbing the ground. The scent simply stopped. A family 8 miles away reported hearing a blood-curdling scream that day, followed by what they described as a tall, Bigfoot-like creature carrying a human-sized bag. This account, though scrutinized, matches other sporadic cryptid reports in our files. Dennis Martin was never seen again. How does a 6-year-old vanish from a small clearing in 5 minutes without leaving a trace? It defies every piece of tracking and investigative knowledge we possess. The Dennis Martin case is chilling, but it is one among many. Over the years, I have compiled a list of key criteria that bind these cases together. One major factor is water. Many victims disappear close to a body of water, a stream, a pond, or a lake, but they are rarely, if ever, found in it. Another is the weather anomaly. A severe and often very localized storm will roll in almost immediately after the person disappears. This sudden change effectively neutralizes the ability of search and rescue dogs to track a scent. Then there is the issue of elevation. People found in these clusters are often located significantly higher in elevation than where they disappeared. This means they climbed a steep incline, a logically irrational action for someone who is lost, panicked, or suffering from the elements. Why would a toddler scale a mountain ridge? Perhaps the strangest factor of all is the clothing. When a body is recovered, often months or even years later, it is sometimes found with the clothes neatly folded nearby, or the person is found completely nude. Standard explanations like paradoxical undressing simply do not fit the facts or the preceding conditions. The behavior is too precise, too deliberate, and finally, a highly specific denominator, a high percentage of victims, particularly children, are of German or Polish descent. I do not pretend to know what that means. But when you are looking for patterns, you must record every single anomaly. Let's pivot to the impossible circumstances of some of the finds. Because sometimes the victims are recovered and the details are worse than if they were never found at all. Take the case of Alfred Beilhartz, a 4-year-old who disappeared from a campground near Cascade Falls, Colorado, in 1938. He vanished almost instantly near a roaring waterfall. 8 months later, a recovery team found Alfred's remains, not at the bottom of the falls, but in a heavily forested area, over half a mile uphill from where he was last seen. The most baffling part, the body was fully intact, but his clothing was gone. There was no sign of scavenging animals. The scene was pristine. How does a small child, in less than a minute, climb a half mile uphill, strip naked, and then die in a manner that leaves no trace of trauma or struggle. The official conclusion utterly fails to explain the preceding circumstances. These finds tell a cohesive, terrifying story. The victim was transported, not by himself, but by something else. A mechanism of removal that we cannot comprehend. Something that had the ability to move the individual vast distances across difficult terrain and then deposit them in an illogical location, often high above the area of the initial search grid. So, why don't you know about this? Why is this not headline news? Why is the public not warned about these dangerous zones? Because when I approached the National Park Service with this data, asking for a consolidated list of missing people, they told me they don't keep one. They claimed it was beyond the scope of their responsibility. This intentional fragmentation of data is why the patterns, the clusters, are never officially acknowledged. It keeps the public from realizing the truth. That something highly unusual is operating in our wilderness. Something predatory. What is responsible for missing 411? Are these sophisticated predators operating with a level of speed and stealth that defies human capability? Are these rare atmospheric or geological phenomena that induce a rapid form of delirium, forcing people to strip their clothes and climb to higher ground? The answers we have are terrifyingly vague. Or are we dealing with something ancient, something endemic to these wild places, something that sees us not as visitors, but as a resource to be harvested? The fact remains a frightening number of people who often fit a very narrow profile are vanishing from our national parks. They are being taken from right under our noses. And the official explanation is always the same. They got lost. But I have looked at the evidence. And that answer simply doesn't add up. The woods are concealing a dark secret. The next time you hike that trail, or set up camp deep in the woods, remember the name Dennis Martin. Remember the uphill journeys. Remember the missing clothing. And ask yourself what happens to the people who are never found. The truth is hidden in the silence of the forest. And it is far more unsettling than you can imagine. If you want to support our continued investigation into the missing 411 cases and help us piece together this massive, chilling puzzle, hit the like button and subscribe to Mystery Rift. Share this video and let's get the word out. Because until we acknowledge the pattern, we cannot begin to understand the source. Thank you for watching. And be careful out there. The woods are vast, and they are watching